why Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis is a nightmare matchup for both guys. I think the narrative is either Khamzat gets an easy first round finish or Dricus du Plessis takes over in the later rounds, survives the first round and dominates in 4 and 5 and maybe gets a TKO. But even if Dricus survives the first round, he's still in danger for the other 4 rounds and it's not an easy decision win for him. And Khamzat Chimaev may not have as much success against Dricus du Plessis as he's had against other guys. But starting off, why you should be worried about Khamzat Chimaev in this matchup against Dricus du Plessis. If he doesn't get the finish in the first round, what will happen? Well, we know he can win a decision in a 3-rounder, beating Burns and Usman by winning a very close 3rd round. He was able to outwork Burns and outwork Usman in both of their fights. But Gilbert Burns doesn't have as good of a gas tank as Dricus du Plessis, and Kamaru Usman took the fight on 10 days notice. We saw Usman be very timid against Khamzat Chimaev, which could do with the takedown threat, but we know he took it on 10 days notice. He didn't look like the same Usman at 170. He was pushing a crazy pace against Colby Covington. He looks scared of gassing out. And I think Dricus has a very high fight IQ. Despite people saying he's a goofy fighter, he looks ridiculous. He does have a very high fight IQ and he comes in with a perfect game plan in almost every single fight. Compared to Kamaru Usman, who didn't even really get a game plan, and Gilbert Burns, who was a pretty low IQ fighter. And despite Dricus du Plessis being at middleweight, he's still very fast, very explosive, and still a very good athlete. He can mix it up to the body, landing good body kicks, landing good body shots. We saw this against Sean Strickland. He realized Strickland's striking defense is very good up top. He leaves the body open, so he targeted Strickland's body throughout the entire fight. We saw him improve on this in the second fight compared to the first fight. This could really get at Khamzat's gas tank, and it could really force him to gas out in their fight, because I do think Khamzat has a decent gas tank for the pace he fights at. And I do think Khamzat can win a decision. It's very possible. At the pace Dricus fights at and his output and his power, I think it's going to be very difficult for him, especially if he gets tired. We know Dricus du Plessis is super powerful. We did see him kind of hurt Adesanya in the 4th round. If Khamzat doesn't get the first round finish, can he win? Yes, he can still win, but every single round his chances get less and less. While Khamzat ragdolled Whitaker in the 1st round and submitted him, and ragdolled Usman in the 1st round and nearly submitted him, I don't think either of those guys' submission defense is as good as Dricus du Plessis, and he just has way better submissions than both of those guys. We know Usman comes from a wrestling background. He has no submission game. He's never been known for his submissions. He just has ground and pound and control time. Compared to Dricus du Plessis, who has many submissions in the UFC, just submitted Israel Adesanya, who I believe he got submitted for the first time in his career against Dricus du Plessis. We know Whitaker comes from a freestyle wrestling background. He used to compete in Australia, but again, he also doesn't have the submission game of Dricus du Plessis. And I don't think his submission defense is as good as Dricus du Plessis. Khamzat dominated 2 great grapplers, but they're very different grapplers compared to Dricus du Plessis. And just in terms of size and physicality, Dricus is much bigger than both of those guys. We know Usman is a welterweight and Whitaker is a pretty small middleweight. We saw Dricus du Plessis use his physicality against Whitaker, take him down and land good ground and pound. And he submitted Adesanya again when Whitaker couldn't do it when he had 2 fights with Adesanya. We know because of the submission threat with Gilbert Burns, Khamzat Chimaev had to stand up in the 1st round. Now, I don't know if that's really going to happen in this fight. I don't think Dricus du Plessis' jiu-jitsu is as good as Gilbert Burns. I don't think Dricus du Plessis, his submissions, jiu-jitsu, I don't think it's obviously as good as Gilbert Burns. But Khamzat was still forced to stand up, and he did win the round, but he only really won it because he dropped Burns at the end with the jab, which Burns is notorious for not being able to see and always getting dropped with. He also submitted Whitaker in the 1st round, which is very impressive. It wasn't fully locked in, and it looked like it was more on the jaw. It broke Whitaker's teeth, which he's had a problem with for most of his career. And I just think Dricus du Plessis, if that choke is on him, even if all of his teeth come out, he's still going to fight. He's not going to tap. Not saying that Whitaker isn't tough, but I think Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev are both some of the toughest guys at middleweight. So because of that, I don't think Khamzat is going to submit him in the 1st round. I think it's close. I think maybe he has like a 40% chance of doing it. Very possible, but I don't see it happening. Now, why you should be worried about Dricus du Plessis. While he is a very good grappler, I do think he's going to get taken down at least some point in the 1st round and likely will get ragdolled for a part of the 1st round. His takedown offense is much better than his takedown defense. We've seen him get taken down by Robert Whitaker and Derek Brunson. Dricus du Plessis is also a very aggressive grappler, which may not help him in this fight. It may be better for him to settle in positions, maybe pull guard, something like that, because Khamzat is always looking to dominate on the ground. He's always looking for the finish, ground and pound submissions, where if he could kind of neutralize Khamzat and avoid all damage, he could avoid getting 10-8'd in the first round and potentially finished. But Dricus du Plessis, he's likely going to be like Whittaker. He's going to try to get up constantly, which Whittaker was able to do, but it left him open and eventually got him submitted. Now, let's say he survives the first round, which I do think will happen. It's still not a guaranteed win for him. It's very possible Khamzat gets a 10-8, which he was able to do to Kamaru Usman and was on his way to doing with Whittaker if Whittaker was able to survive. This means for Dricus to not have a draw and not lose, he has to win all 4 of the other rounds. I also don't think that he's going to get the knockout because Khamzat has a really good chin, and Dricus is powerful, but he wasn't able to finish Strickland in 2 fights. I don't think he's going to knock out Khamzat Chimaev. Even though Khamzat has much worse striking defense than Strickland, he has a really good chin. I just don't see it happening. And even against Adesanya, he was able to kind of hurt him, but Adesanya wasn't hurt that bad despite taking clean shots. And while Dricus du Plessis does have the better cardio, Khamzat does have a very underrated gas tank. You haven't seen in a while what Dricus's gas tank looks like when he's grappling very frequently. In the Strickland fights, there wasn't that much grappling in them. And against Adesanya, his gas tank didn't look as good as it did against Strickland in the rematch because there was more grappling. Obviously, he's always going to push even if he's tired, and that's what got him the finish. And if Khamzat gets a 10-8, he's 100% capable of winning at least one of the other 4 rounds, which would make it a draw if there's no 10-8 for Dricus du Plessis for the other rounds. Both guys don't have great striking defense, and they're both very open on the feet. And I do expect Dricus du Plessis to get the better of Khamzat on the feet. Khamzat's good, but he's very open to right hands. We saw Burns and Usman land a ton of them, and both of those guys are not as powerful as Dricus du Plessis. I think he's also going to land investment shots, body kicks. And another thing I'm nervous about for Dricus du Plessis is I think Khamzat Chimaev's cardio is a lot better than we're expecting. I think he's going to have a much better showing. For the Gilbert Burns fight, yes, he was tired at the end of round 3, but it was an insane war and he still was pushing and he won the 3rd round. And for Kamaru Usman, it was a lot different where he did push in the 3rd round, but it was a pretty slow pace and he was able to win. But if you look at the 2nd round, Khamzat Chimaev does take rounds off. He took the 2nd round off, but I don't think it was just because he was tired from the 1st round. Yes, I'm sure he was a little bit tired, and that's a part of why he took that round off. But we did learn that he broke his arm, or I believe he broke his hand in that fight. And it didn't look so much that he was tired. It didn't look like he was breathing super heavy. It looked more like he was low output and he just didn't want to get hit because of his hand. Even at his pace, I still expect his cardio to be pretty good, and I think he can win at least one of the other 4 rounds. But for Khamzat, Dricus du Plessis is also a real middleweight, not really like Whittaker, who's pretty small, or Usman, who's a welterweight. We'll see if he can ragdoll a real middleweight. This is really the first time he won't really have a physicality advantage over his opponent. So I think this fight is very close and it's very tough to call. One of the things that makes it so difficult is you could pick Dricus du Plessis, but you know there's a good chance he's going to get submitted in the 1st round and it's going to look like a terrible pick. Or you'll pick Khamzat Chimaev and he wins the 1st round, but he just is done after that, and Dricus du Plessis dominates him for the other 4 rounds. So while it is a 50-50 fight, it probably won't be close. This isn't my official breakdown or prediction. That's going to come next week. But right now, I am leaning towards Dricus du Plessis because I don't think he's going to get submitted. I think honestly what it comes down to is, can Dricus du Plessis avoid getting 10-8'd in the 1st round? Because if Khamzat gets a 10-8, I think it honestly may be a draw, because I think Khamzat will win maybe the 3rd round and Dricus wins the 2nd round after Khamzat maybe takes it off and then wins 4 and 5. I also don't know if we're going to see a finish from Dricus du Plessis or other guys. I could easily see this going to the scorecards, even though both of these guys are very good finishers. Let me know who you're picking in this fight, what you disagree with, and yeah.